On the morning of the last day of June 2026, I'm trackside on the Norfolk Southern Harrisburg Line at milepost HP 103 in Hummelstown, Pennsylvania at the Railroad Street crossing. I arrived around 9:15, and temperatures were already very high at around 95 with little cloud cover. Nothing was lined in either direction, and I would wait for almost an hour for the first train to show up. Shortly before 10, Norfolk Southern 16T called approach limited at the automatic block signals at milepost HP 107, going down track 1 to go around Norfolk Southern 256, which was reattaching its power at controlled point Beaver after making a run to Harrisburg Yard. About 5 minutes after 10, 16T calls limited clear at controlled point Burke, crossing over from track 1 to track 2. A decent amount of General Electric locomotives on this 16T, 2 ES44 ACs and 2 AC44 C6Ms, one being the Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia Heritage Unit on the head end, and an ES44 DC as a mid-DPU. On top of the unusual amount of power, a friendly engineer was on board as well, giving a nice horn show before completing the crossing sequence. The 16T runs daily from Irondale, Alabama to Allentown, Pennsylvania, working many yards between Alabama and Pennsylvania, sometimes picking up extra power, which is where the 8050 and 4851 came from. Of articulated empty trash cars brings up the rear half of 16T, having been picked up in Knoxville, Tennessee. 16T brings the empties from Knoxville to Allentown, where Norfolk Southern 10K picks them up to return them to Croxton, New Jersey. Not very long after 16T passed by, a clear aspect popped up on track 1 at Burke for a westbound. After around 20 minutes of waiting, the line's train came into view around the curve with another friendly engineer on board, giving 2 extra taps of the horn. This is Norfolk Southern 33A, daily manifest from Abrams, Pennsylvania to Conway, Pennsylvania. 33A normally runs with only 2 locomotives, and I was surprised to see it with 3. After the last car passed it, the defect detector at milepost HP 103.3 gave a no defects report to the crew of 33A.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 103.3, track 1, no defects. Repeat, no defects.
Once the crew of the aforementioned 256 had reattached the locomotives to the cars, the conductor called the Harrisburg terminal dispatcher, informing them that they were ready to leave, and quickly being lined with a clear aspect at Beaver to go east. A pair of C-44-9Ws lead the 56-car train, with the engineer giving a few blows of the 9877's K5 LLA horn after completing the crossing sequence for Railroad Street. 256 originates in Chicago, Illinois from Union Pacific, bound for Croxton, New Jersey, being a mix of high-priority double stacks. Due to it often running very early in the morning, I had never seen a train symboled as 256 prior. Not too long after 256 disappeared, a westbound was lined down track 1 with a clear aspect at Burke, with another eastbound train departing the Harrisburg fuel pad. I had no clue which train would arrive first, so I set up on the west side of the Railroad Street crossing, as there is much less notice for westbounds, as there are no nearby crossings trains have to blow the horn at. After 20 minutes of waiting there, I heard a horn blowing for Overview Drive to the west, and quickly moved to the other side of the crossing. The arriving eastbound was Norfolk Southern 38G, a daily Conway to Abrams manifest, being led by a solo AC-44C6M with a very great K5 LA horn. Yet another friendly engineer is on board 38G, giving an awesome horn show as the train approaches. A second AC-44C6M serves as a mid-DPU on 38G, roaring loudly as it works hard to keep the back half of the train moving. A K5 LLA horn sounds as the tail end of 38G comes into view, belonging to Norfolk Southern 11N. With 38G not yet clear of the crossing, the head end of 11N was completely blocked as it charged west. After the last car of 38G passed it, the 103.3 defect detector gave its report to the crew.
Norfolk Southern, milepost 103.3, track 2, now defects. Repeat, now defects.
Another hard-working mid-DPU is on 11N, pushing 48 empty auto racks and pulling another 49, making the train a total of 97 cars long. After waiting a while after the meet between 38G and 11N, the signal at Burke jumps up to a limited clear aspect on track 2 for a westbound. My scanner picks up Norfolk Southern 269 calling approach limited at the automatic block signals at milepost HP 101 around 12:15, and the train comes into view not long after. The AC-44C6M on the point of 269 is equipped with a P5 horn, a not-so-common horn type in this day and age. 269 is an all-international double-stack train, running from Elizabeth, New Jersey to Chicago on a daily basis, replacing the Elizabeth to Harrisburg leg of the former Norfolk Southern 21W. This 269 is pretty lengthy, totaling in at 51 cars of various lengths. Not long after 269 passed me, my scanner picked up Norfolk Southern H24 requesting permission out of the yard in Hershey, Pennsylvania near milepost HP 98, and were given the okay from the dispatcher to come up to Burke and stop. A high green clear popped up on track 2 at Burke for Norfolk Southern 29G, a westbound priority intermodal, which is the reason for H24's stop. H24 comes into view around the curve first, slowing to a stop as the conductor gets off to do a roll-by inspection of 29G, which could be heard giving a few blows of the horn to warn the H24 crew of its arrival. A nice power set on this 29G, with a Norfolk Southern SD70 ACE leading, a Union Pacific C45 ACCTE, the same thing as an ES44AC, trailing second, and a Norfolk Southern AC44C6M trailing third. A bunch of high-priority trailers and double stacks are usually what's found on 29G, with this one being no exception. It was a tad bit shorter than normal at only 31 cars. After 29G cleared Burke, H24 got the go-ahead to cross over from track 1 to track 2 with a medium approach. A GP59E mother slug set is the power for H24, having been the Operation Lifesaver painted GP59E 6655 and RP-M4C 627 for years. Slugs like 627 do not have their own prime movers. They are simply a frame filled with concrete on top of working traction motors that only work when paired to a mother unit. Some slugs are equipped with cabs and control stands, like seen here, while others are not. A Conrail caboose almost always brings up the rear of this train, serving as a safe place for the conductor to stand when shoving backwards. Once H24 crossed to track 2, the train begins its shove backward. To my surprise, the train stopped before passing through the railroad street crossing, and the conductor got off and messed around with the flashing red end of train device hanging from the caboose coupler. A few minutes after stopping, an approach aspect came up at Burke for H24, and they proceeded west again.
I've got me baffled. How about you?
I had absolutely no idea what the crew of H24 was doing, so I decided to start packing up. As I was doing so, H24 began shoving backward once again, so I did a quick handheld video of them passing by. The 103.3 defect detector gave a detector not working report to the crew after the train passed.
Hummelstown, milepost 103.3, track 2, detector not working. With H24 gone, nothing else on the way, and being on borrowed time, I put my stuff into the car and headed back to my grandparents' house to eat and prepare for the 2-hour journey back home.